Electronic Arts goes private, and what makes a good game? This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free magazine on Flipboard and on the web. Want to cut through all the noise and find out what you can do with your Apple gear? MacVoices Magazine focuses on just that, aggregating the best how-to articles and information. Get it by searching for MacVoices in the Flipboard app or visiting macvoices.com/magazine. All right. Well, this was kind of a big deal last week, and then it sort of faded, I guess, because of a lot of other things that were happening. But EA confirms it will go private in a $55 billion acquisition that involves the Saudis, and that seemed to be part of the big controversy. But I took a little something different away from this, that EA's been losing money, and it makes me wonder if gaming is in a little bit of trouble because one of its biggest studios is losing money. Am I just reaching for something, or am I imprinting my personal views on it, guys? Mark,
I think that gaming has been in trouble for a while for a lack of originality. I mean, most of what you see that comes out these days are sequels to games that first came out 5, 10 or longer years ago. They're not really looking for anything new. It's kind of the same thing that's happened to the Marvel cinematic universe. There's just, you've got 50 freaking years of comic book stories in there, and they're just not plumbing the depths of what's there and just not giving us stuff that's very interesting. And I think it's the same thing with gamers. I mean, gaming is kind of a niche anyway. So the fact that some gamers are starting to get older now, and some gamers are, getting tired of seeing the same things over and over again. The fact that it's, it's just not as interesting as it used to be, and that they're spending millions of dollars on a product that will never get its money back.
Mark?
Yeah, so I would agree with Guy, and I would make a point. It's not just video games, but a lot of movies, are they're basically Tom Cruise and how many Mission Impossible or the Fast and Furious. Are we up to episode 666 yet? It sure feels like it.
Devil, you say.
They're just managing properties and sort of injecting them new stories. I can't think of a better way than AI to drum out the next boring one that they're hoping that, it's a franchise, people love it, they're going to come back in. And as you were saying, Guy, I think about games. At some point, this is boring. I want something new. And so I think that's why they're going private, because that's the best way to restructure a company. You don't have to do it underneath the Klieg lights of Wall Street, where you're getting criticized every quarter for what's going on. And the Saudi involvement, well, the Saudis are very interested in AI, and establishing, an AI presence in their kingdom. So, again, this is another interesting thing that I think is going to be fascinating to see what happens in a couple of years.
Let's see, Jeff.
Okay, so I love where everyone's been going with this discussion. And here's the part that I will add to it. What's happening for EA. Yes, and seeing what's happening with EA here is actually indicative of a larger problem in the gaming industry as a whole, and the sentiments that we've heard people expressing here about, it's the same old thing, and people are getting bored of what we're getting for games. The gaming industry did a shift as video rendering technology improved, where they stopped focusing in many cases on the gaming aspect of the games and started looking at what they're creating as if they were making a major motion picture. And I think we would be much better served in the gaming space if these companies would take that energy that they're putting into creating essentially a cinematic spectacle and put it back into gameplay.
Yes.
And until they do that, we're going to see more stories like what we're seeing with EA.
Okay. Brian.
Yeah, so just to add on to with the comments about the originality and sometimes the lack thereof coming out in the video game spaces, EA is a massive, massive, massive developer and publisher with several studios under its wings. And they've recently canceled a couple of games, Black Panther being one, and then their Need for Speed franchise, their race car game studios. And the big thing I think that has to do with those in particular is the ability, and where I think a lot of gaming is at and where it continues to grow. And that is the live games where people keep reinvesting in that same game over and over again, buying skins, buying upgrades, buying the fake in-game currency in order to buy additional items, weapons, those types of things in all the different types of games that they make. The other thing that EA does a pretty good job of is annual releases of sports games. And with those annual releases, you tend to have a lot of incremental improvements, but nothing that's from a development side of things costs an incredible amount of money. And so I think, if you look at kind of where the cost of gaming is at, and you have games that used to come out when an idea would come out and they wanted to build a sequel for that game, there might be maybe a 2 or 3 year cycle when that next game would come out. And when a particular console platform would be available, you might have 2 or 3 games on that console of that particular intellectual property. Nowadays, you're lucky to have one. Sometimes it even skips a generation because the development time between some of these original ideas is just so long. So it's interesting how, it's just a changing landscape. And I think this is probably just a result of that.
But isn't that ideal for AI? All these hundreds of thousands of GPUs that can work way faster, than a human.
Yeah, I think so.
Can I
Okay,
interject something real quick? When you look at the state of gaming hardware, who is really doing the best right now? Pretty much Nintendo with the Switch. The Switch does not have the best graphics. It doesn't have the fanciest controllers. But what Nintendo has invested in is gameplay and in-house development for their platform. So they own the production of the games that are being played on the platform. You look at, I can't remember what it's the Link games. When the Switch 1 first came out, they had, Flyers of the Moon or whatever they called that game. And it was phenomenal. It sold like crazy. Were the graphics photorealistic? No. But it was fun to play. And that's what all of these game companies that make games keep forgetting. You've got to make it fun to play, not just I'm going to go down this path until I get to a boss level, kill the boss, and then I go on to the next level. There's got to be more to it than that. There has to be something there. And a lot of them have forgotten that.
Webb.
I'm going to say something that's going to be probably controversial to this panel. You're all missing the point. It has nothing to do with gaming platforms. This is strictly in and out a stockholder issue. And from the last I heard, every shareholder is going to be getting $2.10 a share, $2.15 a share. First of all, the board has to take that into account. They cannot say, what they have to do is they're going to say, is gaming going to get bigger? Is it going to get better? Do they have an opportunity where the $210 a share is insufficient? So I appreciate where we are, and some of us, I'm not one personally, but a lot of us are somewhat into gaming, at least more than I am, put it that way. But where gaming's going has nothing to do with this. This is a leverage buyout. and they're trying to take the company and go private. That's the issue here.
Okay.
You can hate me now.
But I don't hate you, but I think if you pry beneath the surface, the question is why? What do they think they can do with those assets that they would spend whatever it was, the $55 billion?
Is it a case of them finding a buyer who thinks they can do something with it and wanting to cash out and head for the hills?
At 55 billion, there aren't very many buyers out there unless they break it up. So,
yeah, I mean, that perspective, the buyer's always got to be thinking about what those assets mean and what they could do with it. And
exactly.
Yes, I think probably the EA board is thinking, we've seen years of our profitability is just is going up by single digits. The cost of building these games is going higher. This is a real problem. This business has turned and it's gone from being great to really stinky. How do we get out of this? And you have somebody who has a vision and deep pockets, and they'd say, hey, why don't you sell to us? And we have a great idea of what we can do. And everyone's we get out of this, and the deal gets done.
Mark, they don't have to have a vision or a great idea. They just have to have the deep pockets.
Well, you're being too cynical, Jeff. I mean, no one, even dumb money is going to throw $55 billion at something unless they have an idea that they can make it worth something more.
Should I point out the obvious exception to that?
Sure, go ahead.
Twitter.
Disagree.
You disagree. You don't know what Musk's reason for buying it was. Just because you don't know. So we don't. Musk is a crazy enough guy that increasing his value may not have been his objective. And in this deal too, yes, we're speculating. I may only be 99% right that they think that they can make a better use of the EA assets than the current company is doing.
Well, and I have to bring this up, given Jeff's comment about Twitter, that there is a Saudi component here, and we're into the discussion of we've had sports washing and we've had other kind of washings, and now do we have game washing, or whatever the appropriate term would be? That there is an alternative or an alternate motivation, an alternate agenda, as opposed to just flat out making money. So
could be for the days when oil isn't as big as it is now.
Well, that's true, but they've got so much. I mean, they got so much money now, Guy. They seem to be throwing it wherever they think they can make
see where it sticks,
an inroad, and I'm not even sure that the inroad is really into that particular industry. I mean, somebody here talked to me about soccer. I don't know, or football in Europe, and the team they bought there, and then of course they funded Live Golf, and so now and there are other things that I'm leaving on the table. But so is there another agenda here at play? And to Webb's point, that we all sort of missed, that they wanted to buy into this game. That was a terrible pun, but you know what I meant. So right. I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those. It seemed to blow up in the media last week and then just zap right back down. And I couldn't decide if it was just overwhelmed by other pieces or if that was just the nature of this, that suddenly everybody wanted to go quiet on it.
I think it's just the nature of the news cycle. Other things came
up.
Yeah, maybe. Anything else before we leave that? Because I want to make sure anybody that wanted to get. Oh, I did want to say Marty was doing audio visual commentary by holding up various games.
Yeah, people talked about them. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, and Marty, I have no familiarity with any of them, so I didn't know if there was any hidden meaning there or just.
Yeah, no, I have very little familiarity of any of them. They just happen to be sitting on my desk, not being used as much as I'd like. I have a Switch, and I can really kick ass with Jeopardy, but that's about it.
Marty, I love that you held up Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga. That game is just brilliant and glorious and so much fun. And even after you complete all the quests and side games and hidden games, you can still just keep going around and playing and doing stuff. It is so well crafted, and the graphics are really simple. I mean, yes, they're better than what we had on the Apple IIe by a long shot, but it's pretty simple graphics, and there's nothing cinematic about it. But holy crap, what a fun game!
Jeff, let's go there for just a second, because I think you were the one that said it earlier. Can you define playability for me? As in what makes for a good game? Not, I know what playability is, but what makes a game have good playability?
It has to have whatever your end goal is in the game. It has to have a clear structure for how that fits in with what you're doing. And so, like in the case of Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga, you have series of puzzles that you're trying to solve. They have varying levels of difficulty. Okay, so you get sometimes where you get something that's a little easier and you're like, yeah, I got it. That was fun. And then other times where it's a lot harder. And now you have to work through it more. And then you have that sense of accomplishment. Then you also have the ability to have flexibility in the game so that you're not limited to just the one thing. And a great example of that is Super Mario Brothers. On the surface, this is a very simple game. You go and you run left to right, you jump over stuff, you hit things, and you try to not get eaten by Goombas or whatever. But when you really start playing, there's a lot of things you can do. I can jump up here, and then you can discover all these other things. I can jump into a pipe, and now I have this completely other experience in the game as I puzzle through all of this. And then you end up back to where you're going towards your intended goal. It's such a simple game, but it's designed in a way so that it's emotionally compelling, and it keeps you engaged, and it's difficult enough so that you don't get bored, but not so difficult that you get incredibly frustrated. But if you want that extra frustration level, then you find the other secret things and mess with those. And so you can have the surprises, but you get that payoff because you completed whatever the level was or the game was. There's an engagement there that doesn't require big cinematic cutscenes. It just, the game gives you everything you need so that you can actually play, and you don't need additional explanation.
Okay, thank you. I ask because sort of something Brian said. I'm sorry, we're still on the game thing, but that I stumbled across a video on YouTube that apparently was done inside one of these game engines, and it was a superhero thing, and it didn't. There was no question in my mind that I was watching something that was computer generated. It's not like the AI avatar thing that we were talking about earlier, but it was really very good, to the point that you think, okay, why isn't somebody doing original stories for some of these characters with these engines?
No, they are. You've got the Red versus Black series, or Red versus Blue series over in Halo. That's been going on for years.
Okay, so this I'm way out of my element, but it feels like that sort of melds into our first discussion, that each of these engines is getting so much better, whether it's AI in Hollywood or whether it's the game AIs, but they're getting just that they can be used to create original content. And where does that leave everybody? So, and I don't know what'd you say, the red and the black?
Red versus blue.
Red versus blue, excuse me. Okay.
And that's done with multiplayer mode in Halo. And they just have the characters do things and then record audio behind it.
Brian, you say you're into red versus blue?
Yeah, I haven't watched some new. I don't even know if they make new ones or not. But I remember.
I haven't seen anything about it in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember watching some of those. Yeah, it's great.
Interesting.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.